Do you guys hear that?
Is that boss music?
Go naked and just go with the sword, and that's it.
What do I do with all this?
It says it in the title.
I'm a slut for roguelites.
Hi everyone, and welcome back to the Unearthing Games Podcast. My name is Erica, and I'll be your lead excavator today. I'm also joined by...
Hi, I'm Nick.
And we dig games. In this podcast, we each play a new video game each week, and on top of that, we also play a new board game together that we talk about here on the podcast. Before we get into that, Nick, what have you been up to this week?
What have I been up to? Thinking about it, my 3-month trial for Xbox Game Pass finally came up, or it was coming up like next week, I think, you know. And I saw on my Xbox dashboard it had this whole "Get Game Pass Ultimate for $1," and I clicked on it, and it was like another 3 months, but for $1. And I was like, well, I get my first 3 months free, get my second 3 months for $1. How could I pass that up? So I now have Xbox Game Pass Ultimate. I'm gonna have to go and try it out and see what playing an Xbox Game Pass game from my phone is gonna be like. Might be a bit of a stressful experience, but we'll find out. I know the controllers we have are Bluetooth, so that'll be easy enough. Just be me squinting at a tiny screen. So I'm looking forward to trying that out. I know I've been using Game Pass a lot for finding new games. What I'm going to talk about, my game for this week, I actually found on Game Pass. So I got Game Pass Ultimate. I downloaded a bunch of new games now because the library that I had before from my trial was a bit limited, I guess, because I was just part of the Xbox PC Game Pass PC platform instead of being Ultimate. And so now I have the Ultimate membership, so I can access all the games on Game Pass. So that's like includes like the big AAA titles like Doom Eternal. I know that game, the new game Control, or it's new. I think it came out last year. Just dropped on there, and a whole bunch of other titles. So I went and downloaded a whole bunch. Like there was a game called Haven, a game called Yes, Your Majesty, Control. I haven't downloaded Doom Eternal yet because I haven't played the first one yet, so I need to go and do that. But I'll probably play that one too at some point. So I downloaded a whole bunch of those and been testing them out. So other than that, though, I don't think I've really been up to a whole lot. You know, just been chilling. It's been a bit colder. Tried to put together a natural gas conversion kit for our grill. You were there with me for that, and that was
Yes.
That was a nightmare to say the least. Well, no.
So it didn't go bad. It's just we don't have all the parts we need to complete the process.
Yeah, so not a nightmare, just a bit of a stressor. We we thought it would just be as simple as remove old hose, attach new hose, wham bam, cook your stuff on a grill.
Well, so it is pretty much like that. The only additional step is to change out was it like a propane? What was it called? Orifice.
We had to change out the propane orifice for the natural gas orifice.
Yeah, and our kit didn't have the natural gas orifices in the kit, but it was also like an open box that we got. So I'm not 100% sure if it was supposed to be in there or if they were just not included. So
yeah, so I'm gonna call the 1-800 number and try not to be an angry customer, but just ask, about it. Other than that, just been working. You've been working. We've been working. We put up our Christmas decorations finally, and yeah, that's been about it for me. What about you? What have you been up to?
I haven't been up too much as far as video games. I did play quite a bit of Tetris last night. While you were on your D&D game, I was playing Tetris.
Tetris. Oh, on the Switch.
Yes.
Was it Puyo Puyo Tetris?
Yeah, I played just the Tetris version, but
that's the best one.
What I didn't know before playing that whole Puyo Puyo Tetris thing was that Tetris was when you clear 4 lines at once. So basically when you get one of those long, skinny, straight guys and you drop him in and you get the 4 lines cleared, that is technically Tetris.
Yeah. I know in the game, in Puyo Puyo, when you do it, the little anime characters you have sitting on the sideline will be like, Tetris!
Yeah.
Whenever that happens.
Yeah, I like before. I mean, I've played Tetris before this, right? And I never knew that that was called Tetris. I
Well,
thought, I mean, you just make lines. Like, there's nothing special about making more than one line at once. But apparently, there is. And
well,
making the whole four stack is actually a lot better.
I mean, before now, you never had little cutesy anime characters cheering you on the sidelines. So, yeah.
This is true. So I played some Tetris, and then I also knit this Santa hat. If you're watching the video version of the podcast, you can find it on YouTube. I'm showing my Santa hat right now.
You've been working on that for what, a good 3 weeks? 3 weeks now, right? I think you started it at the beginning of November, I think.
It took me a while to actually start this. Remember, I couldn't find the right yarn, and I thought I didn't have enough of the yarn that I had on hand, and so I was worried about what if I ran out, and then I couldn't find a matching yarn that matched it exactly, so then I'd have to restart it. And it turns out that the ball of yarn I did have was enough to actually finish it, and I bought 2 extra balls of yarn for, other projects.
Or you could knit me a swanky hat without all the complicated cabling.
You just want like a plain one?
Well, I mean, I would love to have the cabling, but I don't want to ask you to like. It seemed like it was a lot of work, and I don't want to be like, oh, hey, go and put all this ridiculous amount of effort in for a hat that I'm going to wear 1 month of the year.
It actually wasn't that bad. Like the cabling was pretty simple. It actually makes the pattern feel like it's going by faster, since like every like 4 or 5 rows is different. So it's not like, as far as when you're just doing a basic stitch and it's like every row is the same, that gets a little tiresome. But this way was like, okay, I do 3 rows and then I have to do a cable. Which cable is it going to be, type of thing? Even though, I mean, you know which one it is going to be. But
yeah. Well, I think I've got. I'll have to dig it up for the next podcast, but I think I've got a blue Santa hat around here somewhere.
yeah, I think I crocheted you a blue Santa hat last year or the year before that. And then the little poof ball got destroyed in the washing machine.
So we need to find that hat. Yeah, we'll dig it up for next time. We can both be festive.
But that is what I was up to this week. Just some Tetris and work and knitting this Santa hat, which I'm very happy about.
I mean, and naturally, you were part of the grill shenanigans and the Christmas lights shenanigans too. I mean,
yeah,
you were there.
Yeah, I was lead. The head on Christmas decorating, since it's always been like a super huge thing that my family does, is like to go all out for Christmas lights. So like the day after Thanksgiving is basically we go to my parents and put up all of the lights, and they have a lot. So every tree is covered, every bush is covered, the mailbox is covered. It's everything. So obviously I want to do that with my own house, but it's 2-story, and that's a lot harder to do on your own, and so we're not doing it on our own. So maybe next year we'll put some money aside to pay for someone to come and do that for us. We just wrapped some of the bushes we have up front and put a little schnauzer light up lawn decor thing. We have 2 schnauzers. So we put that out there.
Yeah, they're adorable. I remember you, because I stayed home this Thanksgiving. I know you were down with your parents to put all the Christmas decorations up. I haven't traveled since the plague started. And yeah, you sent me that picture of it, and I gotta say, it looks amazing. Like, you'd think it was professionally done, like your parents' house. It looks great.
It takes so long. It takes like a whole day to put everything up, and it used to involve me getting up on their roof, which at this specific point in the roof is pretty much like a 2-story high roof. And getting on the very tip of the garage to hang the lights and stuff, but luckily my dad got like a really long extension pole thing, so it's easier to get the lights way up there without having to go up there. Still have to go on a very, like those extenda ladders, you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Like they're just long straight ladders and they extend out. Oh, those are, I don't like them. Like they feel so unsafe, even though I mean it's engineered to not be to be safe. I have to still get up on one of those to put like the big light up wreath above the garage, and those ladders, it freaks me out.
No, I get you. yeah, so I guess not too much, but enough stuff we've been up to, right?
Yep. All right. So, Nick, do you want to kick us off and talk about your video game you played this week?
Absolutely. So, the game that I played this week is another roguelite, no surprise there, called ScourgeBringer. This was developed by Flying Oak Games, or the Steam page says it was a collaboration between Flying Oak Games and E Studio. But when I looked up who E Studio is, it looks like they are like a music sound engineer group.
Okay.
So, so I could see how they were a collaboration in that, since the audio done for this game was phenomenal. So it's a collaboration between those two. On Steam, its tags are indie, action, adventure, roguelite, and roguelike. So there's just two of those things.
Yeah, so that's something, right? So you and Jake are both fans of roguelikes? But sometimes when you guys talk about it, I feel like you're saying roguelite with a T instead of a K. And so I'm always confused as far as what those two, what the difference between the two are, and like which ones you guys like versus don't like. I don't know if there's like a huge difference between the two.
Well, I'm probably confusing the two of them, honestly, but I know Jacob and I like both of them.
Okay.
If I'm remembering correctly, I think roguelite it's similar to it's kind of like similar to that sort of thing, but I think roguelites focus more on that fail forward sort of strategy where every time you die, you gain something that you can add to the next run. So I'm thinking like Rogue Legacy, where you make a run and you collect as much gold as you can, and when you die, you go back to the beginning and you spend that gold on upgrades. So you increase your health, your armor, your attack damage, whatever.
Yeah.
I think that's roguelite. I think roguelike, and roguelike, I think is ones that it focuses on, like nothing that you do really alters the run itself. But I guess instead of having a focus on multiple runs, the game has a focus on just this run that you're doing right now. Like the whole goal is to just go from start to finish.
Okay.
And like, yeah, you might be able to do things to alter it. Like I'm thinking like Dead Cells and Enter the Gungeon, where nothing you do really changes the gameplay, but you can unlock, different things to find along the way. Like I know in Dead Cells and in Gungeon, you can unlock different weapons that could show up in your run. There's no guarantee that they'll be there. And so it doesn't ever alter like your actual playable stats or anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I could be mixing those up. So
I think that makes sense in the naming though, right? So like roguelike, or with the K, Like, would be, the main version, and then roguelite, Lite, would be a lighter version of the roguelike, where it still has the same type of feel to it, but you get to progress. So it's a little bit easier, like somewhat of an easy mode for roguelike, because you get to upgrade and get better every time you play it. Does that make sense? Where you get to have like upgrades every time you play through a different round.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I would say I know, but both of them, they still, what is it? They're spiritual predecessors to the original game Rogue, which I think all of them, roguelites and likes, all have that stress on that. They stress that difficult gameplay. It's always supposed to be a difficulty curve there. It's a hard game. It's just how it tackles that. Like either you just have to get better playing, or play a lot so you can level up.
Okay.
So, yeah. So ScourgeBringer fits into that. I'm trying to think. It's sort of it's a 2D game, pixel art style. It's got like this sort of parkour samurai feel to it.
Okay.
Like you're this little character that the picture of her, it shows like this girl with a big katana on her back and like flowy wispy hair and a little robot sidekick.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're playing the actual game, your little tiny pixel avatar has like a big afro. So she's like little afro samurai, like digital punk sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
The basic premise of the game is that some alien entity has come and destroyed most of the Earth, like most of humanity is gone. And every so often, the remnants of humanity will send their strongest warrior into this thing to try to destroy it.
Yeah.
And that's who you play. You play your tribe's strongest person. And so I think I saw a thing on the Steam page that the developers referred to it as basically if Dead Cells and Celeste had like a baby, and this was kind of their love child, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I could kind of see the feel for that because the all the like the parkour bits where it all has to do with like you like jumping off, like jumping onto walls, climbing up walls a little bit, and then jumping again and flying through the air and stuff. That all felt like Celeste to me.
Mm-hmm.
But then Enter the Gungeon focused on basically super fast combat. Like it was basically you want to kill the enemies as quickly as you can because the longer that they're alive, the more likely you are to take damage, and healing is very limited. So,
Mm-hmm.
so I could see how it's sort of a spiritual combination of the two.
Yeah.
I really liked it. As you go through, like starting out, the base game is a bit bland, like when you don't have any upgrades or anything. So based on what we talked about earlier, I guess this would be a roguelite, I guess.
Okay.
So as you go through, whenever you beat a mini boss or a boss, you unlock like little currency that you can take back to the starting point, I guess. When you die, you go to this place. It's like a funny tree that has like bells in it, right? Like the chiming tree or something.
Mm-hmm.
And that is your actual skill tree. So and so you unlock a whole bunch of other cool abilities that kind of encourage you to play, for lack of a better to put it, more recklessly. Because like it would have stuff like I had one that it encourages you to basically the more times you hit enemies without touching the ground,
Mm-hmm.
you would see damage increase. So it was like up to like a maximum of like a 25% increase or something like that. So it like encourages you to like keep using your little parkour powers to like never actually touch the ground.
Okay.
And I thought that was pretty cool. And another one lets you use basically like you have three attacks. You have a standard melee, like a power melee, and then a gun. I never used the gun, which could be why I haven't made it past the 4th level because I believe it's got 5, but I've never made it past 4, so I don't know. I never used the gun, but one of the powers I unlocked that I loved was when you use your power attack, you can hit enemy bullets back at them. And so I thought that was really great. And so I had that and the parkour power. And I played recklessly, but I think that reckless style actually got me farther than me trying to be conservative.
Mm-hmm.
So I really liked it. Like I said, very fast gameplay. The sound design is amazing. So like the sound it makes when you hit the bad guys or when the bad guys pop, or even just the character running along the floor. Everything sounds so good. There was a bit that I thought was a bit jarring, for lack of a better way to put it, where the music is so calm and chill until you get into combat. And when you get into combat, it immediately drops into this like heavy metal riff, like dun, 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 dun. And I'm like, wow, for a second there I had like tranquil, like, you know, Zen vibes and all that, and then dun, 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 dun. It would just do that like on like the drop of a hat, because every room is combat, right? But it wouldn't do that until you hit the first enemy. And so it was a bit jarring sometimes, but it all sounded great. So kudos to E Studio for all their fantastic work. But I like I said, I really like it. I know you can get it on like Steam and Xbox, and I'd be confident that you could get it on the Switch. I don't know that for fact. So, but it's a really great game. I honestly really enjoyed it. I would definitely recommend it if you are a fan of the roguelite or roguelike genre. But yeah, I think this came out maybe last year, or no, it actually came out in October of 2020. So it's a relatively new game. So, but yeah, really fantastic art style. It also gave me a lot of Hyper Light Drifter vibes. Remember that game?
Yes.
Pixel art, Dark Soulsy. You know, it was a tough game. Because it's got, like I said, it's got that amazing pixel art style. It has this post-apocalypse vibe to it, and also you recharge your gun by meleeing enemies. So like your gun only has like 6 shots, but every time you hit bad guys, you know, the more times you hit them, the more bullets you regen.
Mm-hmm.
So it was pretty cool. Yeah, I really liked it.
Yeah, so I watched you play a little bit of this, and the first thing I noticed was the music whenever you entered a room, and it just started going crazy, and I was like, okay. And then you finished, and it was all quiet, and I was very confused about the soundtrack and the continuity of the music, because yeah, it just goes from very zen-like to suddenly it's very loud. But I actually kind of like it. It puts you into like, oh my god, there's a battle going on, like, like intense focus music kind of thing. So I kind of really like that. When you were playing the game, I know I've seen you play a lot of different roguelites. Were there any type of like challenge rooms that you encountered? I know in some games that you've played in the past, there's been like, get through this room, like enter the dungeons, like, and get through this room without taking damage, kind of thing.
Oh, yes. So there was one. I don't think it didn't give me anything specific like the Enter the Gungeon challenges where it would be like, don't take damage or don't dodge roll or anything like that.
Yeah.
This one though, it was like a waves fight. So you would like activate this little chest, and I guess it has like a countdown timer to open up. And while it's counting down, waves of enemies keep appearing in the room, and you have to clear basically, I think 5 or 6 different waves to get the chest open. I was always a bit sad because since it's a roguelike game, the chest rooms didn't always appear. And I always loved when those rooms would appear because, I mean, the chest would give you a good 5 to 10 items, which is amazing. But like, yeah, it was a risk reward sort of deal because like you always fought like mini bosses and like big bad guys in these rooms, but it was always so worth it. I loved it. And you'd also wind up seeing probably every enemy you could see on the floor. Like most floors usually had like 6 to 8 different types of monsters that you would fight. And they don't always all appear in the same rooms together. And so the waves room was a good way to actually find out what everything was and kind of see all of their the like move sets, how they move, how they attack you and stuff like that. So I really liked those rooms, especially because it usually meant I would wind up getting damage increases. So
And you mentioned also that you're playing with like a katana and a gun. Are there any different types of weapons in the game, or do you just have those and you kind of get upgrades based on your skill tree?
so there are the skill tree upgrades, right? Those usually only like they would kind of like increase the rate that you would recharge bullets and stuff like that. But there were different guns you could kind of randomly find.
Okay.
Since it's a roguelike, sometimes the rooms instead of having monsters in it would be like a merchant, and it was always that classic sort of Zelda style where you walk in the room and there's a little merchant. He's like, "Hello there, buy something," and they would have like 3 things you could pick. And the currency you would spend is whenever time you kill enemies, you get like these. Like, it calls it the blood. There's like little blood droplets, right? And that's the currency that you spend to buy items from the merchant.
Okay.
And so they would sell different guns, and honestly, it was a pretty large variety of guns. Thinking about it now, I'm kind of wish I had used the guns more because I remember seeing like a shotgun. They had a machine gun. I know there was like a rocket launcher I found at one point, but you could only have one gun at a time. So whenever you picked up a gun, it would replace the previous one you have.
Okay.
So it was pretty cool. Lots of different variety in that. Thinking about it, I bet you that would simplify some of the boss fights, especially if I had like a rocket launcher or something, dealing massive amounts of damage.
Yeah, especially since you didn't use guns when you played through. Maybe if you went through and got some of the different guns you can buy from the merchants, it would help.
Yeah, I'll have to try that out. And now that mentioning the merchants, I thought there was also one merchant I thought was really cool. It was another one of those risk rewards type situations where for him, instead of paying with the blood, you would pay with your maximum health. So I think you start out with having like 10 hit points as your maximum. And so you could basically offer up hit points to get like high powered items.
Okay.
So it's like, hey, you want to take 2 points of damage, and then get this sweet gun or this sweet armor pack. It's like, why not? Risk it. Which I think also played really well into there was every floor has like a power up shrine you can find, like a blood shrine, I think is what it called it. And the shrines always gave you these buffs that were always contingent upon something. Like it's like, okay, get a 5% damage increase for every pip of health you've lost. So like if you've gone down, like if you're down to like 3 pips of health, you have a massive damage boost. But you're also down to 3 pips of health.
Right.
And it always had stuff like that. Or for every room that you clear without taking damage, get 5%, bonus damage kind of thing until you take damage, and then you lose it and it resets.
Yeah.
So it was pretty cool. I could see how a lot of it would kind of synergize very well, But it all just depends on what you find. Like, because of the roguelike games, it's all just roll the dice.
Right.
Hope you find something. But yeah. I really liked it. I do think thinking about the soundtracks now, I don't think the heavy metal track actually changes ever. Like I think on all the floors, every time you get into combat, it's still that same riff. So
Okay.
that might be the only.
Did the boss fights have different music? Maybe that's where the difference
That
was?
could be. That could be. I mean, because you spend most of your time in the regular rooms fighting folks.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I would say it's not even really a negative trait, but that would be the closest thing to a negative thing I have to say about this game.
Yeah.
So, because all in all, it was a fantastic experience. I really liked it. 10 out of 10. I will play again. I have to eventually beat it. I gotta get to the end. But yeah, so ScourgeBringer by Flying Oak Games and E Studio. So I really liked it.
Cool. So now that you've talked about your game, I'll go ahead and talk about mine. This week, I played a game called Human Resource Machine. And this game on Steam is tagged as a programming, puzzle, indie, casual education game. And so the whole so when you first open this game, something I really love about it is that you open it off of Steam or wherever you're playing it, and it goes straight to, oh, sorry, this is by the Tomorrow Corporation. So when you actually open the game, the first thing it goes to is just says, presented by Tomorrow Corporation. And then it goes straight to like what the little image you see when you look at this game in Steam. And it's like a tall skyscraper, and it has in big letters on the front, Human Resource Machine. And there's all these cute little guys hanging around, and they're all dancing. So you go to the screen, and there's some really good music playing, and it gets you all like excited to play the game. And when I first opened it up and saw them all dancing and stuff, I was like, look, Nick, there's you. And there's one guy off to the left on like a neighboring building that we'll have to put a link to him somewhere, but I was just like, this is Nick, and just the way he danced even was Nick.
I see him on here. The last picture on Steam is this picture. The resemblance, it's uncanny. They must know that I work in human resources. Tomorrow Corporation. They did their research.
This is what HR people look like.
This is the face of HR.
Yes. So I really love that. Well, anyway, this game, what it's about is it's your career through this company. So you don't actually really work in human resources. Your first level, and so the level design of this is each level you have a different puzzle that you have to solve using code. And the coding is simplified, obviously, for like a game format. You like drag and drop different boxes of code into your little program that you're making. But when you start out in the mail room, right at the bottom. So you're sorting mail, and basically it's like, okay, we need everything from the inbox to go to the outbox. And it's just a simple code where you drag inbox over and you drag outbox, and then you have the jump option where you can repeat the code over and over until it's done, basically. And every level is just a little bit more complex. And so once you do the basics, it starts getting you into adding numbers together, or we only want zeros going to the outbox, and there's a mixture of letters and numbers. And so it's a lot of trying to figure out which way the programming works. And there's a lot of, so the main path line, there's like one in like the level map, there's one main course you can take that goes all the way to the top, and then off of that there's some branches that come off, and they're like little challenge levels kind of thing. And so when I first started, I started through the first like 6 levels, I think. And then that's where it branches, and you can go through the challenge levels or to regular. And I was like, I'm going to do the challenge. I can do this. And the challenges were to multiply numbers. So it was like, okay, we want every number from the inbox multiplied by 4 and then put in the outbox. It's like, okay, that's easy. You just add it to itself 4 times. Or you add it to itself, put that on, and then copy that and then add it again. So 2 plus 2 is 4, and then 4 plus 4 is 8, and that's basically 2 times 4. So that was pretty simple. Then the next one was multiply by 8, and I was like, okay, I can do that. And then the third challenge level and the last in this little tree was to multiply each number by 40. And that took me a while to figure out. I was sitting there with sticky notes all over the place, like, okay, well, this times this would be, and just trying to figure it out, like Mind Hunter style with all the pictures on the wall and the strings connecting them and stuff. It was intense. And Nick was just sitting there in the background like, yeah, I don't know, you lost me. There's math. And I was like, oh God, I need help. I can't figure this out. I did figure it out eventually, though.
Yeah, I thought you were like trying to solve who the Zodiac killer was or something with all those post-it notes, but I was about to say that I don't think, like, you said that you don't actually work in human resources, but I do remember there was one point where I think like one puzzle had you send all the numbers but zeros. You had to throw away the zeros, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then like I remember the next room was like, well, it turns out the people from HR said that's not very inclusive of us, so we want you to only send the zeros through. And I was like, wait, that's not how diversity and inclusion works. But I think that was the closest I saw while through your playthrough of human resources.
Yeah, and it has cute. So I when I was first playing through this, I was just focusing on the puzzles. But when you're actually going through it, it has some funny little jokes. So every level you go to, there's like a little boss man, your little boss, sitting behind a little desk in the corner. And you can ask him for like tips, and some of them were actually pretty interesting. So there was one puzzle that I got to where I just couldn't for the life of me understand how to do it within, a certain amount of steps. So something that these puzzles also have once you get to the higher levels, well, not really higher, but once you get past like the intro basic stuff, there's some like additional challenges for each level where you have to beat them in as short of a code as possible. So each line of code is counted, and it's like a size challenge is what it says. And basically it says, well, you did your the process correctly, but you did it in 20 lines, and optimal code length is 15. Like there's a solution out there that's only 15 long. Like you have 5 extra steps in there somewhere. And then the other one is the time challenge, I believe, which is basically how many times it had to go through the speed challenge, which is basically how many steps it had to go through to complete it. So obviously, if there's, some if functions, like if it's 0, then jump over here, you'll skip a few steps and then go to the end and do whatever steps are down there. And basically, it just counts how many steps are in your code to finish the challenge. And I couldn't for the life of me understand how to do this one puzzle. And I had finished it and I was like, okay, cool. And then the little challenge thing came up at the end, and it's like, okay, your code was, like I said, I think it was like 18 steps. The code length was 18 and the steps was like 26 or something. And then the ideal amount was 10 and 20. And I was like, oh my God, how am I supposed to remove 8 whole lines of code from this? Like, what am I doing wrong? And so I actually clicked on the little boss guy, and you can ask him for like a hint. And he actually said something about, this is what people refer to as, and he named a specific type of coding. To actually, if you want to, look that up and it'll help you. And so I actually looked it up, and it's actually like, actual coding and how this type of code is written, and that's supposed to help you, once you do your research and stuff, understand how to make that code shorter. Which I was like, oh, it actually is educational. It's living up to that tag on Steam.
Oh, I remember there was one that I know, like the first so many, like you got so high up on the list where every time you achieved both of those things, where you had the optimum like steps and the optimum processes, right?
Mm-hmm.
I remember there was one you hit where you got one, but you didn't get the other.
Right.
And you were like so upset, so you did it again. And again, you got one, but not the other. And then like the little secretary lady pops up, and she's like, sometimes you won't be able to get one and the other in the same tribe, so you'll have to come up with a different process to do the other one. And it was
Yeah.
like, well, that changes perspective, knowing that you don't have to do them both at once.
Yeah. And I thought that was interesting too. It's like you can do, especially that one. I got the first one, the code length, and I got that one, but then it was too many steps. So the amount of times I had to repeat that code length was just a little bit too much. And I was like, okay, well, how do I fix this? And then I didn't fix it. Like it's hard for me. So when I was going through it, I realized that when I was going through the coding, the way my brain works, I was like, okay, so you do this, and if not, then you go over here, type of thing. And I can put it all out like that. And then when I run it, it'll work, but then it'll be super long. But since I've already thought through it and got it to the right answer, it's hard for me to rethink how to pull something out to get to a shorter answer. Because I was like, well, I mean, you have to do this step because then you have to go to this other step. And it's like, well, no, there's another way to do this. But it was very hard for me to wrap my head around, well, how do I do this one shorter once I had already completed it correctly? And I also think that's just because I was playing it really late at night. It was like almost midnight and I was playing it after a long day of work. And I was like, maybe my brain is just tired today.
So this could be where maybe our education has let us down, because like I always remember like in earlier math, it was always like find the answer to this problem, and like you'd find it, and they're like, no, 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 you're supposed to find it the way I told you to find it, which is the long and complicated way. We see that you found a shortcut. Don't do the shortcuts. Do it the long way.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, so you don't want me to do this an efficient way. You want me to just do it your way. So we didn't actually learn how to do math.
I never felt like I had that issue with my math teachers. I guess I was lucky, but it was never like show your work, and if you got to the right answer, you were still wrong. It was show your work, and it's like, okay, use this other approach, but you're still right. Like I never had the thing where it was like, no, you didn't do it my way, so it's wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. They would never count it wrong. I always had the whole like you get it right, but it's like -1 point because because you didn't follow the given formula.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you got the right answer, but you didn't do it my way, so I'm gonna dock you 1 point.
Yeah.
And they did that every time I did a shortcut, and so they just beat the shortcuts out of me, and I was like, fine, I'll do it your way. So.
But yeah, so that's Human Resource Machine. I love the music for the start menu. I guess one thing is that during the actual levels, the music is very mellow and calm and completely not what that beginning start menu was like, which made me kind of sad. But I think it also makes sense in the fact that you have a lot to try to focus on and try to think through, that having music just like going like, steadily would kind of be distracting to you. So it's kind of like a, here's your problem, figure it out. And, the room is quiet for the test type of thing.
Well, seems like Tomorrow Corporation, they did their homework on gaming psychology, right?
Yeah, I really loved it. Something that I really want to try to get through to the end. I tried pulling it up a day after I had first opened it, and I went through a few more levels, not getting the speed or the size challenges, and just getting a solution that worked. And then I got to one where it was like, okay, we want you to take the first number from the conveyor belt and multiply it by the second number on the conveyor belt. And the only options I had were add, subtract, add 1 or subtract 1. And then like the regular inbox, outbox, copy to, copy from kind of thing. So I was like, I don't know how to get it to pick up a number, understand what number it is, and then pick up the other number and multiply it by that amount. So that's where I was just like, yeah, it's late. I gotta close this because I couldn't understand how that would work. I'm sure like there's got to be a way, right? I just didn't understand how to do it at that time. So it's definitely something I'd like to play through. Even if it's just a very watered down version of coding, I think it's still interesting to learn it.
Yeah, I honestly like watching you play it and how much you got into it. You'll definitely keep playing this. So, yeah.
But yeah. So that was Tomorrow Corp. That was Human Resource Machine by Tomorrow Corporation. So now that we've gone through our video games this week, we'll go ahead and start talking about our board game. Nick, if you want to kick that off.
Absolutely. So the game that we played this week is called Parks. Just that. It is a collaboration between Keymaster Games and the 59 Parks art series. So I wasn't familiar with what that is before we played this game. Apparently the 59 Parks series, like they do like these really great art pieces based on all of the national parks in the US, right? I would assume they're all the US national parks.
Yes.
And so it's a collaboration between them. The game itself was designed by a Henry Audubon. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. It's Audubon. Audubon. I don't know. So he designed it. Like I said, it was published by Keymaster Games, and so it's a pretty awesome game. It has an amazing art style, naturally because it's got the 59 Parks art folks in it. So it looks amazing. It's got 1 to 5 players. The box says it should take you about 40 to 70 minutes, and I could see that. Like once everybody knows what's going on, the game goes pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So I really enjoyed our experience. Like it took us a little bit to get into it, That could be that, we have trouble reading instructions, but but once we got figured out how it actually works, I thought it was really great. The premise of the game is that each person each player controls 2 different hikers that are on like a mission to visit as many national parks as they can within a year. And so basically the game takes place over 4 rounds, which are each season, the 4 seasons. And so the whole goal is to like collect as many national parks as you can, right? I'm trying to think. I guess do you want to go over the how the board setup and the mechanics worked?
Yeah, so the way you collect resources to visit these parks, because you have to pay resources to visit parks. So the way that it works is you have these 2 hikers, as Nick mentioned, and they're going down a trail, and this trail is updated every season, so it's 1 space longer every season, and also 1 additional space longer if you have 4+ players, just to have more options. But the trail is basically, you have the start, the end, and based on the number of players and seasons, anywhere from 5 to 9, 10, 11? 5 to 10?
I think so, yeah, because you wind up adding 1 every season.
Yeah. You have about 5 to 10 different like sites on the trail to visit. And so the way it works is you move your hiker to any spot on the trail to the right of it. So you can't backtrack. But you can skip ahead. So you can say, I don't want to go to the first one, I'm going to go to the second one, kind of thing. But as you're going along the trail, each site has a different action you can take. And you have to be able to take the site's action in order to go there. So a lot of the actions really are to collect resources. So if you go to a specific site, you'll get a resource. And so the different types of resources in this game are mountains, trees, suns, and water. And that basically is like the different types of biomes that these parks are in. So trees are for when you're ultimately buying the parks. If you find like the Sequoia National Park that has the big redwoods in California, that park it costs a lot of trees to buy it because it's a tree. It's a tree national park. Versus there was one that was on the coast. It was like might have been like a coral reef or something, and it cost a lot of water and sunshine because it's like a beach. So it kind of coincides with what type of park it is. But as you're going through, you're collecting these resources, and you can only have 12 resources at a time in your hand. So if you ever, get more than that, you have to discard back down to 12. But you're going through to collect resources to visit the parks at the end. And so each of the parks is worth different types of resources and different amounts of resources based on, where the park is, like I said, sea versus mountains, stuff like that. And then also the amount of points the park is worth. So the way you win also is by victory points, and each park is worth a certain amount of points. And then there's a few other ways you can get victory points. But so parks that are worth more points. So when we started playing, I guess just by luck of the shuffle that we did, the first round we had all the parks were worth about 2 or 3 victory points. So the amount of resources was about 3 or 4 resources per park. So it wasn't too bad. And it really eased us into it. But then once we started going through, we started seeing parks that were worth 5 and 6 victory points. And those took like 7 to 8 different resources to actually go visit. And so it kind of scaled up for us nicely just based on the way we shuffled the cards. So, the trailhead, and then you have all the different sites throughout the trail to visit. And then once you get to the end, you can do one of 3 things. You can either reserve a park. So on the board, there's always 3 parks showing, and everyone can see them, and they say on them what the resources are, the victory points and stuff like that. So when you can reserve a park at the end, you can either take one of the ones that is face up on the board and say, I'm claiming this one. I'm going to visit it eventually. No one else will be able to visit it, so it's mine, but I'll have to pay for it eventually. And you just put it, to the side on, your area horizontally, so everyone knows that you haven't actually visited this park yet. Or you can take just luck, luck of the draw, take the top card from the draw pile and say that I'm reserving this park. And so there's some pros and cons to that. Like, you could draw a park that you have all the resources for, or you draw a card that's worth 6 points and it's like 8 different resources that you have none of. So do you want to go for a for sure thing, like what's out there, or do you want to like risk it and see what's on the deck? So that's one of the options. Another option you can do once you get to the end of the trail is you can buy gear. And so gear does different things, and most of them are some type of a buff for you, some kind of a benefit. So there was like journals, and there was certain journals that it would cost 1 less resource to visit a park. And so that was always helpful when, you got 8 resource parks out there to say like, oh, this one's 1 less resource. You don't have to pay it. There's some that give you the option to do different actions during a site visit. So whenever you visit one of the sites on the trail, so some of them, there was one that I got, at least, that at the spot where you can collect 2 water on the trail, you could also perform an additional action. And so that was pretty helpful if I had used it correctly. And so that's pretty much what the gear does. And then the last option you have once you get to the end is to actually visit a park. So at that point, you can say, okay, here are, the 5 resources I need. I'm going to pay them back, and I'm going to take this park. I have visited it. These are my points. And then, a new park is put out on the board or if it's in your reserve, you just flip it vertically to say, I visited this park. And that now counts towards your victory points.
Yeah. I remember, so like the visiting parks thing, I know we talked about how like, I think when the trail starts out, you only have like 5 different places you can visit on the trail.
Mm-hmm.
And then how every season you add a new one. Well, the new ones are like advanced tokens, basically. So they like the 5 ones you start out with are always the same 5. You just shuffle which ones they are.
Mm-hmm.
But the ones you add are going to be random. And I remember one of the ones that you get, it's like an additional chance to visit a park.
Yeah.
Because like whenever someone's at the end of the trail, like they're done for that season. But I thought it was really cool. I know we kind of had bad luck where the visit a park thing didn't show up until like the last season, and it showed up at the very end of the trail. So it's like visit a park and then visit a park again. And it's like, man, I don't have the resources for this, but
right.
I thought that was really cool. I know there was a whole other mechanic that we didn't really explore much of that was taking pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And like the photography thing was you could take a picture. There was a specific spot on the trail that would let you either draw a canteen card or take a photo. And the canteen cards would always work as like whenever you got water off the board, you could fill your canteen, and whenever you filled the canteen, you would get something. Usually, it would be like get a free wood or get a free mountain, or it would give you the option to do like an exchange, like a 1-for-1 trade. Like you could trade like a sun for a mountain or whatever you needed.
Mm.
So the canteens like kind of had a good benefit, but it required that you acquire new water.
Mm.
So because you can't use water you already have in your stockpile to fill them. But that same space, it was either draw a canteen card or you turn in 2 resources to take a photo,
Mm-hmm.
and that lets you each photo is worth 1 victory point.
Right.
I remember we saw some of the gear. Like I think you bought one, but I didn't buy any of them. Where it would give you the option because you can only take photos at that spot unless you have gear that says otherwise. So you could find like wide angle lenses because we're taking panoramic shots, right?
Yeah.
To go and be able to take a photo at the mountain site or the forest site or the water site.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought that was really cool. We didn't really explore that, but thinking about it, I feel like that would be a really popular mechanic for like a 3 or 4 player game. Because, I mean, no matter what, you still have a very limited number of choices to pick on the trail. And so this would kind of give you an option to, if you can't get enough resources, you could at least get enough to take a photo, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought that was pretty neat. It was definitely a really cool mechanic that I look forward to trying again. Like I said, I want to get my brothers together with this so we can have like 4 players running through it. I think that'll be a whole different dynamic.
Yeah,
So.
especially since something I didn't mention, I don't think we've mentioned, is that when you're going through the trail, only one hiker can be in a site at a time. So that's the rule unless you use your campfire. So each player has a campfire that starts out lit, and if you want to go to a site where there's already another hiker, you basically burn your campfire, and you can't go to a site that's already occupied again until one of your hikers gets to the end. So once one of your hikers gets to the end, the campfire gets relit and you can use it again. But that's only 2 times that you can really do that during the round or during the season. So I could see how having more players would definitely limit the amount of spaces that you can go to collect resources, and then also the amount of times you would use your campfire, because everything's going to be full all the time.
Yeah, you'll definitely be competing just for space.
Mm-hmm.
So, but.
And something that we found too was that we started kind of naturally doing this while we played the game is we would send one hiker out to go and collect all the resources first and leave one hiker back at the beginning of the trail. And then once the first ones were kind of towards the end, then we would start bringing out that other one just so that we can go through every site without having to worry about using the campfire or not. And I feel like that's that's a good way to go about it so that you can get your resources. But something that's also built into the game is that if every other hiker has gone through the season and gone to the end of the trail, and there's only one hiker left, he has to automatically go to the end. So leaving your guy behind isn't necessarily the best thing to do because you might miss out on a lot of resources. There was one season in where I was about maybe 3 sites away from the end, and Nick had and I had one already at the end, so only one of my hikers was out still on the trail, and Nick just pulled both of his to the end, and I needed one more resource before I could actually visit a park at the end. And so I lost out on visiting that park because I couldn't get that resource because I was lagging behind and not going to collect the resources sooner.
I didn't do it on purpose.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, parks. I mean, I don't think this is a new game, right? This game has been out for a little while.
Yeah, it's been out for a little bit. This is another one that we saw at PAX last year, when we were going through the board game library to play some new games, and I had seen it, and I don't think we actually got a chance to play it that day because we had played a few other games, but I had seen it and read about it, and I was like, you know what? I really want this game. It's really pretty. Seems like it's going to be a lot of fun. So I looked it up, and they had actually just started a Kickstarter for an expansion. So I jumped on that, and of course. And so I kickstarted their expansion, and I got the base copy of the game. And so hopefully also we can go through and play the expansion at some point. So we just played the base game, but hopefully we can go through and play the expansion and then talk about that also.
Yeah, I think that'll be really great. We can come back and talk about what's changed. Like what sort of differences does this one add? Because I think what was it the expansion is called Nightfall, I believe. You can see it like on their website on keymastergames.com. They have both parks and then the expansion listed now. And so I'm wondering what all Nightfall's going to add. So I think that'll be pretty cool to come back and talk about that later on.
Yeah, I think it has something like adding camping, but I don't know how you I don't know how it would work. Like we'd have to just play it. But yeah, this was another game that we started playing, and then we're like, are we doing this right? And we realized we weren't. So we're like, well, it's still the first season. We haven't really finished it. So let's just restart real quick. Read the instructions.
Yeah, it's crucial. But yeah, I think we had a ton of fun. Like I know we really enjoyed it. And then I think one final thought was that I think one of the most satisfying things about this game was putting it back in the box. Like I know, like with a lot of games, you open them up and they have a ton of little pieces, and you rip them open, and they might give you little baggies to put them in, or they might not. And but this one, everything has a place. And so all of like the decks of cards, the little trail pieces, the board itself, the first player token, everything fits in perfectly. So that no matter what, like you have to just purposefully throw them in there for it not to fit perfectly back in the box. Like when you're done, you just lay the instruction manual on top and it's flush at the top of the box and it closes. And it was if you've it's one of those oddly satisfying sort of deals. It was great.
Yeah, and then all the resources, they both fit into 2 separate trays that are shaped like a little tree branch, and they each have a little lid, and when you're playing the game, you just take the whole little tray out and you take the lid off, and you can pull resources as you go. You put them away, you put the little lid on, and they fit perfectly in the box, and it's just I love it, because like Nick was saying, with some of the bigger games like Caverna and stuff, you get all of those pieces out there, and it's just like, okay, game's over, let's put it away, and then someone inevitably disappears. It's like, oh yeah, I gotta go get some water real quick, I'll be back, and they get away from putting the game away, which is not fair. So I love a game that makes it easy to put it away at the end. It just makes it very satisfying. Even just playing it, making it easier to play during the game, having the trays there that are readily available to everyone. And there's 2 of the same identical trays, so you have 2 pools of resources, one on either side of the board for everyone to reach, and it's easier to play than having hundreds of little baggies sitting around and people saying, oh, well, I need a wood. Well, okay, let me search in the pile. Where's that bag? It just makes it so much easier, and I love it.
Yeah. Very, very considerate of the designer and the devs and all that to not only think up a cool game with a lot of little parts, but also they thought of the end user and how cleanup is going to be, and that's like I said, it's just very considerate, and I love it. So I actually want to go and check out other games by these folks to see if the other games are just as considerate.
I was going to say, we need to open the expansion box just to see if it's like that also.
Oh. But yeah, parks. It was great.
So that was it. That's our 2 video games of the week and our board game. We hope you enjoyed, and we hope to see you next week. Bye.
Toodle.